Shields up, Ironbreakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video, and today was day 2 of the digital events for Monster Hunter Rise. Naturally, we live streamed the whole thing alongside the official live stream, and before we actually get to today's topics, I would just like to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for showing up to these 2 live streams. It really made it more special. There was a lot of people there. It was really awesome to just hang out with you guys and check out all of the news that was happening for Monster Hunter Rise. And there was also an amazing amount of support, and I really do appreciate it. I just wanted to thank you guys because I don't take any of this stuff for granted, and particularly during a pandemic, I realize that, everyone is having to manage their budgets extremely tightly. So the fact that you choose to spend some of your expendable income on me, I highly appreciate it, but just do make sure that you take care of yourselves and your families first. Like, I will be fine, okay? Do not worry about me. I do appreciate the support, but make sure you take care of yourself and your loved ones first, okay? But anyway, in today's live stream, we had some gameplay with Goss Harag and Chargeblade. We actually got to take a look at all of the Chargeblade's switch skills, and we'll be talking about that in greater detail. In the Japanese stream, there was actually more information that was revealed there. I didn't actually get to watch that particular live stream, and they haven't re-uploaded it, but I will be talking about the Japanese live stream later today when I record the Third Fleet podcast with Gaijin Hunters. So you guys can look forward to learning more about that in tomorrow's Third Fleet podcast episode. We also got a little bit more information about the Rampage, as well as some new tidbits on the interview with Ichinose-san. So it was, all in all, it was a really great event once again. So let's get started by talking about some of the Chargeblade's switch skills. So the first thing that a lot of people have been asking, where is the Savage Axe Slash? Well, Savage Axe Slash, it's not really called Savage Axe Slash anymore. It is now called Condensed Spinning Slash, and it actually works differently than what it did in Monster Hunter World. But how do you have access to it, you might ask? Well, it is a switch skill that you have to swap out for Condensed Element Slash. So what does this mean? You can choose to either have the skill that charges up your sword when you're playing Chargeblade, or you can choose to have the Savage Axe-like skill. You can't have both. You have to swap between one or the other. Unless they change it before the game releases. That is the information that we have right now, okay? And basically the way that it works is you do the same move that you would do in order to do Condensed Element Slash, except instead of charging your sword, you start spinning your axe around and you do special attacks. Now, an interesting thing about Condensed Spinning Slash is that unlike Savage Axe Slash, which would expend your files, Condensed Spinning Slash actually generates files instead. So when you hit a monster with Condensed Spinning Slash, the longer hits, I'm not exactly sure what that means. Maybe you can't hit him just glancing. You have to actually hit a good part of the monster. But those hits are going to generate additional files for you. So this means that counter peak performance might not be as important if you choose to use Condensed Spinning Slash, because you'll be able to generate files that way. Another switch skill is Morph Slash. Now, the Morph Slash skill is a little bit more ominous because the text doesn't really explain what the advantage is over one or the other. But Morph Slash, for those of you that are not aware, is the slash that you do whenever you go from sword mode into axe mode and you do an attack. So basically you press your block button plus X and you do that axe attack. That is called Morph Slash. The other Morph Slash is when you press the blocking button and you're in axe mode and your character just kind of spins around and transforms it back into sword and shield mode for the charge blade, right? That's Morph Slash. And basically you get to pick between having those 2 moves or having a different version of those 2 moves called the Counter Morph Slash. Now, at first glance, from just reading the text, it seems like the difference is going to be the animation commitment, but essentially Counter Morph Slash appears to be a little bit more lenient when it comes to guard points, so it will be easier for you to perform guard points. That's my interpretation. Do not quote me on that. I'll have to actually play the game. But, at first glance, that is what it seems like. But I think the downside of that is that the animation for Morph Slash is probably going to be a little bit slower, whereas the regular Morph Slash is going to be a little bit faster. So the other thing about counter morph slash is that if you're able to pull off a guard point while you're doing counter morph slash, your amped elemental discharge is going to deal additional damage. I think even the super amped elemental discharge is going to deal additional damage. So, you know, it seems like the counter one is more built around you actually landing those guard points and countering the monster using that, whereas the morph slash is more for you just being faster around swapping from axe mode into sword mode. At first glance, it just seemed to me like counter morph slash was just a better option, but I think that when we get to the game, we'll actually see the downsides of each of these, but I still feel like potentially more people are going to use counter morph slash, but who knows? I can get to the game and see the animations for counter morph slash and be like, oh, this actually doesn't feel nearly as good as morph slash, so, you know. But basically, this is just a lot of speculation at this point. Just know that there's going to be two types that you're going to be able to choose from with the Charge Blade. The next thing we already knew, which was counter peak performance, which is the counter ability that we already saw for the Charge Blade. If you guys are wondering what that is, I have videos on every single one of the weapons based around the stuff that we saw during the demo, and counter peak performance is one of those skills, so if you just go to my Charge Blade video, you should get a pretty good idea of how that works. But counter peak performance can be replaced with the Axe Hopper, which is the new move that we saw in the more recent trailers, where you see someone just, you know, jump in the middle of the air, pull the Charge Blade all the way back and slam a monster in the face with it. That is the Axe Hopper. Now, like I said, in the Japanese version of today's event, you actually got to see all of the longsword switch skills. I personally didn't get to see that particular live stream, and even if I did see that live stream, I wouldn't be able to interpret the katakana, so it wouldn't be that useful. But Gaijin Hunter did mention that you can swap out the normal Spirit Round Slash finisher for the Valor finisher, which is something that a lot of people call to my attention. You guys need to understand, I don't play that much longsword. Should be pretty obvious, so I wouldn't really identify a lot of the new moves for longsword because I just don't care for it, but a lot of people call to my attention, Rurikhan, there was the Valor finisher was there. Well, according to Gaijin, you basically are able to swap the final Spirit Round Slash for the Valor finisher instead. And for those of you wondering, yes, it still charges your spirit gauge just like the other one. So I don't know at this point what is the particular advantage to having one or the other, but I'm sure it's going to be something like Morph Slash and Counter Morph Slash, where one does something slightly better than the other, and, you know, that's just going to be the way that that stuff is going to work. But that is pretty much it when it comes to the new information in regards to switch skills and stuff like that. The gameplay from Goss Harag was pretty badass. One of the things that got confirmed was the fact that Goss Harag actually can dual wield ice blades, which I pretty much called it the first time that we saw Goss Harag. I was just saying, wouldn't it be cool if he was able to just like dual wield swords instead of just having one on one hand? And that totally happened in today's video. He also yeets the swords at you. There's some really good stuff there. You guys should check out the unedited video. I'll put a link in the description of this video so that you can go and check out the entirety of the Goss Harag hunt. You also see some Tetranodon wyvern riding in that quest, which was really, really cool. But now I wanted to talk a little bit more about Rampage, almost like an update of sorts, because I already did a deep dive into Rampage yesterday, but then today we get a little bit more information. Almost makes me wish that I had delayed that video, but here we are. So, very first thing, Rampage. There are going to be hordes and hordes of monsters as opposed to just being 4 monsters. So, you're going to be fighting waves of monsters, and it seems like you'll be repelling monsters instead of actually slaying them. And from what I could tell in this video, it looks like it's going to be a survival type situation. So basically, they give you a timer, and a lot of the times I saw like 4 minutes and 30 seconds on at least I think the earlier levels of the Rampage. So basically, if you reach the ending of that time and your defenses are still intact, I think some of the monsters just leave, but you're also able to get the monsters to leave if you deal enough damage, because you're actually... doesn't seem like you're actually slaying monsters, you're going to be repelling them. So you just, you know, you hit them, you throw artillery at them until they eventually go away. But it is a little bit more tactical than just like a complete mess of monsters going all over the place. The monsters are going to be swarming over you. We've seen as much as 5 monsters at this point in some of the gameplay footage. I talked about this last night when I was analyzing the trailer. And the thing about it is going to be that each monster is going to potentially do a different thing. So there's going to be icons on top of the monster's head. A red icon that looks like red teeth. Those monsters are basically going to try and attack hunters. Monsters that have a blue icon above their heads that looks like a blue gate, those monsters are going to be attacking your barricades and your gates. So they're going to be basically trying to push through. So this is probably going to be something that has like several stages. Think of it almost like if you look at the old Siege quests, even just like Zora Magdaros or something like that. The difference is Zora Magdaros was a scripted fight. So Zora Magdaros breaks through a barrier and then you chase him down to the next barrier and then eventually you have to defend that one. I don't think this one's going to be scripted. So the monster's going to be coming, they're going to be trying to bust through the barriers and you want to try to prevent them from doing so. So blue icon monsters are particularly important. Make sure you target those as fast as you possibly can. Then there's a couple of monsters that have green icon. Looks like these will usually be flyers like Aknosom and potentially I would assume Rathalos, Rathian. And the monsters with the green icon, those are going to target your defenses. So like your artillery weapons, your, as they called it in my Rampage video, the hunting installations. That is what they're going to be attacking. So those are also important. But, you know, in terms of like a quick priority, I would go blue, green, red. Because, you know, you want to make sure that you still have your defenses up. You want to make sure that they don't break through the walls and the gates that are in their way. So that would be my initial priority target, but who knows? Obviously, this is going to depend on what strategy you're doing, what defenses you have available to you, and all of that jazz. From the video that they showed today, my early impression leads me to believe that Stronghold level is going to be on a per hunt basis. Like, you guys remember the way that you would go to the Guiding Lands, and every single time that you would get a break or something, well, this happens pretty much in every hunt. Every single time you would get a break on a monster or you would pick up an account item, you would gain points. Those are the points that appear to give you the XP for Stronghold. So whenever you repel a monster, you gain points for your Stronghold. And it appears to level up on a per hunt basis. So it's not going to be like a permanent progression, particularly at the rate at which you were leveling it up. Because I think if it was not on a per hunt basis, I'm pretty sure I'd be able to get it almost like level 5 on the first Rampage, which would, you know, that would be a really fast progression loop. Like, oh, I did 3 Rampages, I'm done. My Stronghold's maxed out. So it's going to be much more of a thing where you have to level it up every time, each Rampage, to be given access to additional defenses and stuff like that. The higher your Stronghold goes, the better defenses will be available to you. And, you know, that's pretty much the structure. So hordes of monsters come in, you have to survive for a certain amount of time, then the next horde comes in, have to survive again for a certain amount of time, and then eventually you get the one which is the major threat monster or the apex monster or whatever, and you have to repel that and prevent it from actually breaching into your gates. Another important thing that was mentioned is that your friendly NPCs from Kamura can only help you out once per quest, which means that, you know, the theory that I had where potentially you would be developing relationships with these NPCs and that would, you know, improve their performance when they were doing Rampage, stuff like that, that's probably not going to happen. It seems like you using villagers from Kamura is going to work kind of like a Dragonator situation. You basically summon them into the field, they do their attack, and then they leave. That is my current impression on it. And I know that some of you are concerned because you're like, well, how am I supposed to do a Rampage quest solo? More about that in just a couple of minutes as we tackle the interview with Ichinose-san. Now, there was something that was very concerning to me in this interview. There were actually a lot of really good questions. A lot of times you get some interviews that the questions aren't that great, but there were a lot of really important information in this particular interview, so I really enjoyed it. So initially they asked Ichinose about like DLC, how is that going to work? And this is where I got some information that I'm not exactly sure how I feel about yet, and one of the things that he said was that at the end of April, there's going to be a quest that is going to unlock your Hunter rank cap. So that means that your Hunter rank, when the game releases, is actually going to be capped until the end of April, at which point they will release free DLC that is going to uncap your Hunter rank. So anybody that is planning on hitting Hunter rank 999 on the first week, you're not going to do that. So in a way, it's like there's a positive aspect to this, which is like I'm not really going to feel pressured to just boost through, which, to be honest, I would never boost through the game. It's just something that I don't tend to do. As you guys know, it took me over 200 hours to finish Monster Hunter World because I was taking my time. I'm savoring these games like fine wine, and I don't care that there's people that finish them in 30 hours, 10 hours, 5 hours, or however fast you want to go through it. I just honestly don't care. I'm going to be enjoying my time. I'm going to be taking my time with it. So in a way, I'm kind of like, well, that's good. At least nobody's going to like get too far ahead of me. But in another way, I'm like, well, but what if someone wants to just, just power through? It kind of sucks for them, Because I know that there are people that just prefer to take these games on and just play them nonstop until they get everything they want out of it and then move on. And I think that should be a viable play style. I'm not a big fan of, stuff being added later in a way with something as specific as the hunter rank. But anyway, once you take on that quest and you unlock your hunter rank, then you will have to raise your rank to take on newly added monsters. So you're going to have, that tells me that monsters are not going to be just like, oh, it's locked behind hunter rank 24 or whatever, which was not, or was it hunter rank 16? And World was hunter rank 16, which was not really that relevant. You could get to that no problem. I think they're actually going to gate the difficulty a little bit more aggressively this time around so that people don't end up in hunts they're not supposed to be in. Like your hunter rank 24 hunter just jumping into a Fatalis hunt, because that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But And then they said that the second update is going to add more monsters and the conclusion to the story. Now, I think that this is probably, translating Japanese to English sometimes can get a little bit complicated. And it's not exactly what it sounds, because this almost made it sound, when I read it during the interview, I was like, this almost sounds like the game's not finished when it comes out, If the conclusion of the story is going to be added in the second update, I was really taken aback by that. So Gaijin posted a tweet shortly after, and here's what he has to say about it. And again, I'm going to be talking with him more in the Third Fleet podcast today, but he says in his tweet, I know the official stream had this written as if it's the ending of the game, as if you don't get an ending at launch, but in Japanese they used, and then there's a Japanese writing, and he says, for ending, switch an additional ending. My guess is something like an EX episode that takes place after the conclusion of the main story. So this was what I was thinking at the start of the stream when I saw the words additional ending, because I was seeing Gaijin's tweets from earlier. I'm thinking it's going to be something in the veins of like, when you finished Iceborne, you finished the story, right? You beat the final boss, you beat Shadei-Shvalda, boom. That was the ending of that particular story arc. And then they added another story arc in the form of like Fatalis, right? I think that is the idea. And then when you finish that, you get another ending, which is the ending of the Fatalis story arc, which was completely separate from the Shadei-Shvalda. It had nothing to do with the story of Shadei-Shvalda. I think that is what we're getting with the second update. There's going to be like some kind of a story-focused thing that adds some additional stuff into the story, but it's not the ending of the story. I still feel like by the time you reach the ending of the game, you're going to get your satisfying conclusion that we usually get with Monster Hunter games, and then they're going to add a little bit more for people to enjoy. That is my interpretation from the stuff that is being presented to me right now, so, take that as you will. Now, the Ichinose also mentioned that Rampage is essentially inspired by a Japanese picture called the Hyaki Yako, which depicts a scene with lots of yokai, and said something about a parade of 100 dragons. Haven't really Googled up all of this stuff. I'm going to try to put some images in the video, hopefully. But yeah, this is why we're fighting hordes and hordes of monsters. This was the source of the inspiration of this particular mode for the game. And now I know I'm about to answer one of the most important questions for a lot of people, and that is, can I still do Rampage if I do not have Nintendo Online, if I do not have friends that play the game, if I am just a solo hunter? And the answer is yes. Ichinose specifically said that Rampage is going to be a solo-friendly event. So even if you do not engage in Nintendo Online, if you do not have friends that play this game, you can still do Rampages completely solo. Now, I would like to point out that, in my opinion, whenever there is a particular event that involves a lot of artillery, it tends not to be nearly as fun when you're doing it solo. I've pointed this out for quests like Xenojiva. I don't think Xenojiva is that much fun if you're doing it solo, despite the fact that that does not have artillery and stuff, but he's just like a huge monster. It feels better when you're tackling him as a group. But more importantly, Zora Magdaros. There's a lot of people that hate the Zora Magdaros fight. Personally, I actually think it's a really fun fight. It could have been done a lot better because ultimately you can just cannon spam it by the time you get there. But I feel like if they had done more stuff and given you more reasons to go back on top of Xenojiva, and you'd have some hunters doing artillery and some hunters actually attacking Xenojiva, I think that could be a really fun thing. So I think that Rampage, despite the fact that it is a solo-friendly thing and the monsters are going to be scaled for solo and you're going to be able to grind it solo, I still think it'll be a much better experience in multiplayer, but that is just my thought about it. We will see when the game actually comes out how it feels, but just know that it will be scaled for solo. They do have 4 difficulty scalings in this game, which is actually 1 more scaling than Monster Hunter World. For those of you that are not aware, Monster Hunter World had 3 difficulty scalings, which was 1 player, 2 player, 4 player. So if you were playing with 3 players, you were playing the difficulty scaling of 4 players. So you know, this one actually has the difficulty scaling for 3 players as well. And finally, an important question, at least I thought it was important, was that they asked if Apex monsters were going to have unique weapons and armor, to which you replied, yes, you will be able to craft special weapons and armor from Apex monsters. I'm thinking potentially something like the Deviant sets that we had in Generations Ultimate, but I don't know. Again, a lot of speculation, but still a lot of new information. It was a fantastic event. Once again, thank you all very much for showing up to the live streams. Thank you all very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, hit it up with a like. If you did not enjoy the video, hit it up with a dislike. Feedback, as I always say, is very important. If you usually enjoy my content, subscribe, bell notification icon, all the stuff. You guys know what it's like. Thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay strong, stay safe, peace out.